Mr. Don Murphy from Cantonsville, Maryland, who I believe is a former state senator. Is that correct?
Rep.
Oh, representative.
Maryland,
Okay.
it's delegate.
Okay. And Penny Biannccio, state representative from Connecticut, also from Republicans for Compassionate Access. Appreciate our colleagues from out east joining us here and being willing to testify and come to Michigan. Appreciate your testimony on this issue. So please do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, I'm a former Maryland State representative, party chairman, and delegate to the 2000 Republican National Convention. I ran for office on a Get Tough on Crime platform after my wife walked into an armed robbery at a convenience store near our home. I won election that year and was seated on the House Judiciary Committee, and needless to say, I was keeping all my campaign promises to get tough on crime. And I was also the lead sponsor, of Maryland's medical marijuana law. The Republican Party oath states that the best government is that which governs least, and that the most effective, responsible, and responsive government is government closest to the people. It's with those tenets in mind that Republicans for Compassionate Access supports the medical marijuana bill, House Bill 547, sponsored by Representative Lemons and co-sponsored by Mr. Chairman Delort.
It's correct.
We're back east. We are a group of like-minded Republicans that believe that it should not be the policy of this or any other state to arrest, prosecute, and incarcerate patients whose only crime is attempting to alleviate the pain and suffering, with their doctor's approval, of pain and suffering caused by life-threatening illnesses. The Centers for Disease Control estimates that in Michigan alone, 48,000 new cases of cancer were diagnosed in 2004. For nearly 20,000 of your constituents, this diagnosis was a death sentence. This is why you cannot wait for the federal government to stop this war on patients. As representatives here in Michigan, it is within your power to protect these patients. And while it's true that state law like this does not protect patients from federal arrest, but it does protect them from 99 out of 100 drug arrests, which make this bill 99% effective. I might point out that after the Supreme Court ruling in the Raich case, Rhode Island passed this bill over the objections of its Republican governor, unfortunately, and overrode his veto. That was after the Raich case. So the Raich case does not affect your ability to pass this bill. It does not affect the law in the other states where it's become law. And this is not just about compassion, but it's about jurisdiction. Who should decide what's best for the people of Michigan? Legislators elected by Michigan voters or members of Congress from the 49 other states not elected from Michigan? And who should decide what's best for patients? Doctors, patients and their families, or politicians and bureaucrats hundreds of miles away in Washington? This issue is not, although we're here as Republicans, about politics, because the people agree. Voters in the blue states of Washington, Oregon, California, and Maine have all passed ballot initiatives. Voters in the red states of Alaska, Nevada, Colorado, and Montana have done the same. AARP polls 72% of seniors agree. And many religious communities endorsed our efforts as well, including the United Methodist Church, the Episcopal Church, the United Church of Christ, the Presbyterian Church, the Evangelical Lutheran Church, and the National Council of Churches. The science is on our side as well. Dr. John Benson, the principal investigator of the National Academy of Sciences, in the 1999 Institute of Medicine report, makes our case when he stated, we concluded, quote, we concluded that there are some limited circumstances in which we recommend smoking marijuana for medical purposes. Relinquishing your jurisdiction and arresting patients is bad public policy and bad politics. I look forward to a favorable report. And before Representative Biannccio testifies, I'd like to just briefly thank Representative Sheen for his very personal and candid comments. I might point out that this bill, unlike the situation you described, if, for example, your brother had gotten to a point, which I imagine he did prior to his death, when he could not go out and obtain marijuana on his own, and he had to depend on a caregiver or a loved one, such as yourself, if you were to have gotten arrested for possessing that marijuana for your brother, you would have been in a situation that, with all due respect, probably would have caused you severe heartburn come re-election time. And that is not the situation that you or anyone else should be put in. If you are younger and you're applying for a position, a job, any kind of a job, whether it be elected or otherwise, you don't want a marijuana arrest for any reason on your permanent record, on a criminal record. To be arrested, to be prosecuted, no matter what the case, that's a situation I think this bill would help avoid. So it would impact, it would have effect for a lot of people in this state, not just those who have cancer, but those who have other debilitating diseases. And I might also point out that in all the states where marijuana, medical marijuana has passed through ballot initiative or the legislative process, that the use by recreational use has dropped more dramatically than it has in the other states on average. So this is not opening up Pandora's box. It is not in the other states. I don't believe it would here. And I certainly believe that the people of Michigan are at least as compassionate as those people in the other states that have passed it by referendum or the legislative process. So, thank you.
Thank you.
That's close. Good morning, Chairman Droletti and esteemed members of this committee. My name is Penny Biannccio. I'm a Republican state representative from Connecticut. I'm entering my 5th year there, coming up in January, and I am the human face of medical marijuana in Connecticut. I've been the co-sponsor of the bill since I joined the General Assembly in 2003. I'm here today because of my personal experience and my interest in passing effective medical marijuana legislation in all states in our country. I had a personal experience almost 25 years ago that prompted me to become involved in the efforts across the country to legalize marijuana, but only for medical purposes. When I was married in 1982, my husband was quickly diagnosed with terminal bone cancer, Ewing sarcoma, which is a fatal and terminal type of cancer. He was very ill. He had chemotherapy and radiation, and he was unable to walk, and I watched him waste away and lose 80 pounds. Finally, the Veterans Hospital in Boston, a doctor pulled me aside and said, you know, you really need to buy some marijuana for your husband. I hadn't smoked marijuana, I had never done drugs, I knew I wanted a public career, and this was a terrifying moment for me. But as I watched my husband basically die in front of me, I decided that I would do it at any cost. For 3 years, I went out and I bought pot for him, and I watched his remarkable, extraordinary recovery. Not that he recovered from the cancer, but he was able to eat, he was able to laugh, and we were able to regain some quality of life. I've heard many of my colleagues in Connecticut say to me, you don't need to have this bill because we have Marinol and we have other drugs that work for this exact same instance. And I can tell you from the bottom of my heart that it's just not true. There are a lot of people in Connecticut, as there are in Michigan and across the country, that Marinol and other drugs do not work for. I know that you've had an opportunity to read all of the literature, and there are many doctors, hundreds if not thousands, if you go nationwide, that will tell you that marijuana is a drug that can work for certain people when other drugs do not. I generally like to just close by proposing that you think about this question when it becomes time to vote on this bill. And as Representative Sheen has candidly pointed out, most of us will at some point in our lives have an experience where we're faced with difficult decisions regarding medical intervention. I was forced to decide, would I watch my husband suffer incredibly, or would I make the choice of purchasing pot? And I made the choice that I think is compassionate and right, and I don't think that I should have had to face possible incarceration and other penalties. The bill before you would simply remove the penalties for people who are using marijuana under their doctor's supervision.